Hello YouTube friends, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome to the Painted South. In today's video, I will be sharing several summer decor makeovers. So let's get right into the video. These two plant pots were from plant purchases that I made last year. I believe I either purchased them at Walmart or Lowe's. I initially tried to just give these pots a quick refresh with a summer color, and that color was way too bright, so I tried a more subtle color, but I just didn't like the design on the pots. Since it is so hot and humid outside here in South Carolina, and I'm sure everywhere else, I decided that I would just gather several more pieces that I wanted to give a refresh to and work inside where it's nice and cool. This hanging planter was a recent thrift store find for $2.50. Again, I didn't care for the design, but the size and the shape were great. To prep all of my pieces, I will either wash them with hot soapy water, or I will just wipe them down with Crud Cutter Gloss Off. And I usually don't rinse after I use this product, however, it just depends on the surface. I can't remember when or where I thrifted this shell planter, but it will also be getting a makeover today. I did find this exact planter on Amazon. I will link it in my Amazon store in case you're interested in one the way it is now. Now this shell planter was purchased new from Ross. I think I paid $9.99 for it. I can't remember how long ago, but you can usually find things like this at all of your home decor stores for a reasonable price. I'm not into the color, but I really love the shape and texture. These heavy plaster shells are supposed to be little shelves, but I'll be using them as decorative bookends or just shell decor. If you find pieces like this and there's any damage, like on this shell, it's very easy to fix with a little bit of joint compound or plaster. Now this pair of shells already has great layered paint, so I'll just be adding a little bit more. There are more projects that are going to be getting makeovers in today's video, and you'll see those in just a little bit. I decided that I wanted to do future videos that have more of a step-by-step tutorial for each of these techniques and finishes that I'm doing today, but in today's video you'll see the basic materials that I use to create all of these finishes, starting with stucco patch. I love using this in my paint mixtures, but you don't really need this to create any of the looks that I'm showing you today. If you've been watching any of my videos, you've probably seen me add joint compound to almost all of my paint for different finishes and different techniques. It really volumizes your paint mixtures. So to start off, I made a base mixture using the stucco patch and joint compound, and I mixed it very thoroughly. I then separated a portion of that mixture into a different plastic container. I added chalk paint in the color Mineral, which I happen to have found on clearance at Walmart. You don't have to use chalk paint when you're making this mixture. You can use any low sheen, matte, or flat paint that you have on hand. Now I will be getting into the nitty-gritty details of how I use this sand for different effects in a later tutorial, but instead of using a sanded grout or stucco patch in your textured paint finishes, for interior projects especially, you can just add sand. Because I wanted an extreme texture for some of these projects, I added fine sand as well as medium coarse sand. As you can see, I'm using a paintbrush to apply the mixture, but later on I end up just using my hands. Now you'll want to be really careful and wear gloves, especially with coarse sand, because the pieces can be very sharp and you might hurt yourself. You'll want to rub, press, and pat the mixture onto the surface so that you get a really good adhesion. This thick textured paint is perfect for covering any type of design patterns that you may not like. So always keep that in mind whenever you go out thrifting or treasure hunting. Buy for the shape and size because you can always make it beautiful to suit your style. So to that last bit of leftover very coarse grit mixture, I added some of the original base mixture and more joint compound along with a little more fine sand only. I added a little more mineral paint along with a dab of brown craft paint, but decided to add a little black paint to make a gray color. And on these pots it ends up being irrelevant because I go in a completely different direction altogether. Always keep that in mind when you're doing these projects. It's so easy to change the colors at any point in the process. You'll see that happen in this video many times, and that is all part of the fun. This is like my adult version of playing in the dirt and mud outside when I was a child, except the end result is one-of-a-kind home decor, but the mess is very similar. These metal cone planters have been waiting for a makeover for a couple years now. I decided that I was going to use the same gray mixture as the base coat, but first I had to give them a quick wipe down with the Crud Cutter Gloss Off. Pollen, dust, and even some of the finish came off. As you can see, it was much easier to just use my hands to apply the paint mixture to these large cones. So if you don't want to add any of the grit to your paint by using stucco patch or sand, but you still want some texture, you can just use joint compound mixed in your paint and get the texture by dabbing or pouncing your brush or sponge. And again, I have plans to create very specific tutorials for those of you who would like to have a more detailed and in-depth explanation. And now on to this little shell planter. I had a tiny remaining amount of the original stucco patch and joint compound base mixture, so I just added a little chalk paint in the color Cashew that I also got on clearance at Walmart. Seashells in nature are the most stunning little creations. My inspiration for all of my summer decor this year came from my small collection of shells, and I'll be sharing that decorating video after this one is posted. Now, I know some people like to jump straight into fall decor after the 4th of July, but it is so hot and humid here in South Carolina, I'm still enjoying the summer season to the fullest. Technically, summer just started on June 20th and it goes until September 22nd this year, so that is how I like to decorate my home for the seasons. Now, that being said, I may start DIYs and shopping hauls prior to that just to show before I actually start decorating. I do like to paint a large group of projects at one time, so as one piece is drying, I can be adding another layer to another one. I sent a photo of this one to my friend Susan in Florida and told her that it was starting to look like a croissant. While I was digging through my summer decor bin, I found this set of candle votives with little gold stands. I'm pretty sure these were given to me by a friend who was just getting rid of some of her old home decor. I decided to leave the old candle inside, and you'll see why in my next video. These were a little scratched up, but this paint mixture will cover those marks nicely and get them ready for a whole new look. As you'll see throughout the rest of this video, I add layers and layers of textured paint and just plain paint by itself in various ways depending on the piece. I usually don't have an exact plan for any of my projects. I just sit down and start creating. Most of my projects usually just evolve as I go along. And I have found that the creative process and the actual act of applying the paint, whether it be by a brush or by my hands, I find it to be very therapeutic and relaxing. And so I encourage you to just gather your supplies and your project pieces and just start creating. Now, you may want to have a general idea of the look that you're going for, but sometimes you don't necessarily need a calculated plan. You just have to start and just go for it. So for these two little pots, I decided that I wanted them to be very dark. So I used black chalk paint to cover the gray completely. And this paint, this Waverly chalk paint in the color ink, is highly pigmented and thick, and so I was able to water it down a little bit so that it would spread easier, and it still covered very nicely. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that this glaze is one of my favorite products to use, and I love this brown color. It blends colors, it creates depth, it adds character, and it ages your pieces very nicely and takes them to the next level. You can use this product full strength or add water to thin it down. You can blot off excess with a dry or a damp cloth. For my projects, it brings out all of the details and makes the next layers of paint pop even more. For all of these projects, and really any project that I do, I just enjoy the process and I keep going until I get that piece to a look that I'm happy with. Even if it's just for now, even if it's just for this season. It's summertime right now and I'm decorating with lighter elements, but if I ever decided that I wanted to go with a darker color, maybe let's say for autumn or in the winter, the texture is already there and I can just tweak the color. I would like to apologize somehow during all of this filming. A few times where I thought I hit the record button, I in fact did not. And it may be because I had gloves on and it just didn't register with the camera. So you'll see some layers that are on these pieces that were not actually shown in this video. And so in future videos, when I do tutorials, I will show how I achieve those details. And one example that I'm speaking of is the layer that I added on top of this black pot. I added it so that you could see some of the sand in the finish. I would like to say that this glaze will change and darken the color of your paint. And sometimes that's something that I want to happen. But if you don't want that to happen, you can apply it over top of a clear coat. So finish painting your project, add your clear coat, and then add your glaze and another clear coat. That way the glaze will only go into the cracks and crevices and make it look aged without changing the base colors of your project. So on this piece, I did use a sanding sponge to give a little bit more of an authentic worn look to that top layer. You can see how the glaze was very dark and thick in some of the areas on this particular pot, and I added a little bit of water with a chip brush and then blotted off the excess. So you can adjust your glaze after you apply it by adding some water and blotting it off. It is water-based. Now for these metal stands that hold the cone planters, the plain black no longer worked with the newly textured finish, so I painted them to look like an aged wrought iron. And this is so simple to do. I added some craft paint to some joint compound for a warm rusty color. And all I did was apply it using a pouncing motion with just a little bit of paint on the ends of my brush. For the second coat, I added some black and some more cinnamon to the leftover paint mixture, which created a really nice iron color. And I went ahead and mixed up a third color using joint compound, classic caramel, a little bit of copper paint, and I took a tiny bit of the iron color and mixed it all together to create a medium brown tone. I applied those two colors back and forth just as I did the first rusty color. This is almost impossible to mess up. You just want to have a light hand, create some texture while you're doing it, and layer the paints, and you want to let them dry in between each coat, and they will dry very quickly because of the joint compound in the paint mixture. And once again, this Java brown glaze is the magic touch that blends all of these paint colors together and really brings this old iron look to life. I almost forgot about these little wall pocket planners that I thrifted years ago for $3 each. These already had great texture, so all I needed to do was to add a little bit of paint. I did love these with the dark sand look, but I ended up doing a creamy paint wash over them for a little bit of a softer blended look. I always like to give my paint projects a really good top coat for protection, either with a brush-on product or a spray-on product, and sometimes I will actually use both. I will be swapping out these plants in the next video. I just used what I had on hand, but I do have new plants for some of these pots, as well as faux greenery for the ones that are not designed for use with water. I really hope you enjoyed this summer makeover video, and I hope that you'll join me in my next video and see how I refreshed our home for summer by adding lots of color, some classic elements, and old world touches. And I will also have a thrift haul as well as a special shout out to meeting a fellow decor enthusiast and subscriber that I met through a Facebook Marketplace purchase. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps support my channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until the next video, bye for now.